novel.
Graphic novel. Yeah.
This is also my study room.
I see. Oh, that's nice. Always good to have a space for yourself.
Mm.
For these, is this only the college, or you get
No,
people?
a lot of people from outside college also join. We usually have 30, but today we are having the post PG exams going on, so maybe the attendance will be a little thinner.
Okay.
Usually we have around 30 people coming. I was wondering whether to have a meeting today or not, but I just thought I'll go with the schedule.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That's true. That's right.
Sangeeta, maybe you can put your camera on and introduce yourself, and if you're okay with that. Before we actually start, we have about 4 minutes, so the presenters can just say hi to Dr. Preeti. She's okay. Let her come back. She's Sivagami.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, good evening.
I'm Dr. Sivagami, ma'am, working as a guest lecturer at Queen Mary's College, ma'am.
Okay.
And then we have Sangeeta's here. Vanitha, come. Vanitha has to come. Priya has to come.
In Chennai, colleges are functioning quite normally, aren't they?
No, the online mode only.
Oh, okay.
We are going to college and teaching online from college.
I see. Okay.
Mm.
So you've not opened up at all?
No, in between we did, and
Uh-huh.
then now in the past few days we we had the floods, no,
Yes, yes, yes.
and quite a few buildings. We had a lot of water stagnation in our compound,
I
in
see.
our
Okay.
campus, and getting that water out was a thing. And then some classrooms, thing. So like that again, the attendance on campus fell,
Okay.
and haven't opened the hostel
I see.
for the past 2 years. There's been no hostel.
Okay. We opened up. I mean, we opened up everything. And what happened was there was an outbreak of COVID across the college,
Oh,
including in the office.
oh my
So
God.
we closed everything down. But now, I mean, my husband was just telling me they're planning to open up again on Monday.
Okay.
Government says you can open up again. So we don't know. When it's a to and fro thing, you know. We open, then we close, and we open, then we close.
Actually, this in tandem club every club has a patron. I have clubs for the undergraduates also.
Okay.
So the patron of our club is Rufus of MCC.
Oh,
Have you met him?
no,
He
no.
is okay. He's very well known in Kerala also.
I see.
You
Okay.
could call him as a speaker sometime.
Oh, yes. We would have to. Yes.
Yeah, I can introduce you.
Ah,
Today, he says he'll come, but he's held up somewhere.
okay.
So, and then Srilata, she's another retired staff who helps us out, retired from Chalamal College. She's not here, I think, as yet. And so Rufus is the patron of our club. um, that kind of academic vigor, no, we need.
Uh-huh. Right, right.
And having these contacts in other colleges
Yes.
in Chennai, outside Chennai. There's Srilata.
Hi.
Srilata, do you know Preeti?
No, we haven't met.
Because she was saying, I think I know this Preeti. No, you haven't. Okay. Srilata is also from Kerala.
I see. Where are you from, ma'am? You're muted.
Srilata, you're muted.
I'm from Mada Amridanandamai's Vallikavu.
Oh, I see.
Mm.
I see.
My husband's from Chenganur.
I see.
So
Okay.
right now I go only to, I mean, mostly to Chenganur. I do have relatives in the other place, Ochira and uh, Vallikavu, but I came at the age of 5, so I can't say that I'm much of a Keralite. Okay,
I
yeah,
see.
we do speak Malayalam. That is there. The culture is there, but all my life I've been here.
I see.
You're from? Where did you study?
I studied in Cochin, Ernakulam.
Okay. The person I call Preeti, I think she is from Institute of English, Kerala. She
Probably.
studied from in Auxilium and
Uh-huh.
Auxilium College. That's where I taught her. That's why I thought it must be that Preeti.
I
Okay.
see.
Hmm.
I see.
Okay. Then what are you? You mean your area is multi? I saw your. I mean your profile. Okay. On
Uh,
the net, I tried to look up.
I see.
Good
So
morning,
I
ma'am.
mean, who it is?
Morning, ma'am.
Morning.
Morning.
Vanitha, seen Vanitha. I don't know whether yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes,
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 ma'am.
seen you.
Vanitha is, we're proud to say she was a research scholar of our department. And she was
Okay,
also there at our conference. She
I see.
okay.
Yes,
presented the
Oh, right,
Multicultural.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
She was there at our
Anna
event.
Adarsh, many of them I know. Once in at least once in a
yes, ma'am.
way.
We've seen you. You've come
Yes,
here, ma'am.
yes.
Yes,
And
Suparna and all are there still.
ma'am. Sup-
Suparna,
Supraja. Yes, ma'am.
Supraja.
Yes, ma'am.
Vanitha, left corner of the screen is Dr. Preeti Srinivasan,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
our
I
chairperson. I don't know if you met at the conference. Both of you have attended the same multiculturalism conference.
uh,
Okay. You've come, Preeti, to Chennai or at any time?
Oh yes, very much. Actually, my father grew up there.
Okay.
Yeah,
In
in Chennai. In Chennai, my uncle is there. I mean, my uncle was working at Shankar Netralaya. Of course,
okay.
retired. I mean, he's about
So
85.
basically, you're from Chennai?
No, no.
No, no,
But
no.
my paternal grandparents were there.
Okay, yeah.
So my father grew up in Chennai. He speaks better Tamil than he speaks Malayalam.
Yeah. Looks like it's the same. Many times it is the same here. Hmm. Yeah. At least we are multicultural in that
Oh yes, very much.
respect. In that
When
respect.
when
Uh,
he speaks to many Tamilians, because of his the native accent that he has, many of them have asked him, "So you had a love marriage? Is it you married a Kerala?"
okay. So he's been here all the while. Okay. Yeah. How long ago was that? Your grandfather's.
Oh well,
Death?
that was very many years ago, ma'am. I mean, my father is 80 now. His brother is 85. Um, so
Hmm.
I
Okay.
yeah. So I mean, they
So that
have
must have been really long ago.
it's called Pandali Nursing Home.
It's still there, I think.
Yes,
Pandali Nursing Home is
yes,
still there, no? On Pundamalli High Road.
power one, yes.
Yeah. We are familiar with that place. So,
I mean, I just come in, once in a week.
uh,
You get into a taxi or somebody comes to pick you up and you go straight.
yeah. Okay.
I think we can start.
Mm.
We can start.
Yes, ma'am.
That's Nancy, the compeer, and she's my full-time research
Mm.
scholar.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, teachers. Good evening. A hearty welcome to one and all present here. I'm Nancy, research scholar, Department of English, Queen Maris College. Today, the topic of our symposium is multiculturalism. Every society is multicultural with differences. Multiculturalism magically magnified to color the colorless world. It's my privilege to welcome the chairperson, Dr. Preeti Kumar, Assistant Professor of English, St. Teresa College, Ernakulam. She has a vast experience of 20 years. Her research was on gender construction in the biographies of Gandhi, and her areas of interest are gender, films, graphic novels, and life writing. She had presented and published many papers at both national and international level. We at Queen Maris had the privilege of having Dr. Preeti's participation in the International Conference on Multiculturalism, held at the time of the centenary celebration in 2014. She has also contributed to our publication Multiculturalism and Social Fabric in Australia, America, and India. I welcome you, ma'am. I welcome the paper presenters of the day, Dr. Vanitha, Assistant Professor of English, Anna Adarsh College, Dr. Sivagami, Ms. Fathima Naseem, and Ms. Sangeeta, guest lecturers of the Department of English, Queen Maris College. Today, we have a special reading session on Nellie Wong's When I Grow Up by Mrs. Priya and Ms. Sangeeta, faculty of the Department of English. I welcome you all. Now, I invite the chairperson, Dr. Preeti Kumar, to take over the proceedings of the session. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a topic that is very relevant today because multiculturalism is much more than just the accommodation of people of diverse cultures into trying to integrate into the mainstream. It is an acceptance, actually, of the differences in the varied cultures that shape the making of a society. A society that never is or never has been monolithic, since essentially all cultures have differences even within themselves. Therefore, when we speak about culture in quotes as a theoretical category, it is never a unified, coherent entity. It is fluid, it is multiple, always in the process of being formed. So we talk about culture as a multiculturalism. So what we look at today is the multitudes of literatures that emerge in a society or in a social fabric whose um, warp and weft are formed out of these interactions. I should say the synergistic interactions of the many ethnicities, languages, religions, um, races, genders that go to form it. So the diverse ethnicities that form, for instance, when we talk about the melting pot of America, for instance, I mean, the diverse cultures, it will include the indigenous First Nations people, the blacks, the Jews, the East, the South Asian voices, many more. So, multiculturalism in a society can be seen either as an ideal or it can be seen as a pragmatic response for the necessity of assimilating people, assimilating those who remain on the margins of the hegemonic cultural identity. So the narratives of these tribals, these immigrants, genders, these disparate marginalized voices gives us a glimpse into how they are repositioning themselves, or they are engaging with, or they are resisting the discourses of mainstream society. And the questions of how these differences are portrayed in the writings of a nation that is linguistically and culturally diverse is of enduring interest to students of culture and of literature. And that is what we are going to engage in today. Now, today we have two very interesting sessions. One is the dramatization of Nellie Wong's When I Was Growing Up, and then we have three paper presentations. We will start with the dramatization of Nellie Wong by the faculty, two members of the faculty of the Department of English. Now, When I Was Growing Up uh, conveys the assimilation of Asian and American cultures through the voice of the Chinese American writer Nellie Wong. It echoes the dominant white culture and the Asian teens' urge to fit into the mainstream of white culture. Um, it ends on a note of realization, which eventually leads to cultural acceptance. Now, this will be dramatized by two members of the Department of English, Queen Mary's College, Ms. Sangeeta and Ms. Priya R. Ms. Sangeeta is a guest lecturer in the department from 2016 onwards. As a theatre enthusiast from her postgraduate days and a mentee of Dr. David Wesley, Assistant Professor MCC, she started training students of Queen Mary's College Department of English in Theatre from 2019 onwards. Priya R is an assistant professor at Queen Mary's College. Her research and publication include post-colonial studies, myth and literature. She has a PG diploma in English language teaching from Annamalai University. Her PhD thesis focuses on the reworking of traditional myths. The recasting of representative characters breaks the shackles of gender constraints. She has also presented a number of papers in national conferences and has also guided many PhD scholars. Without further ado, I invite them both for the dramatization of Nellie Wong's When I Was Growing Up.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for the introduction. Can I begin, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes. When I was growing up, I know now that once I longed to be white. How? You ask. Let me tell you the ways. When I was growing up, people told me I was dark, and I believed my own darkness in the mirror, in my soul, my own narrow vision. When I was growing up, my sisters with fair skin got praised for their beauty, and in the dark, I fell further, crushed between high walls. When I was growing up, I read magazines and saw movies, blonde movie stars, white skin, sensuous lips, and to be elevated to become a woman, a desirable woman. I began to wear imaginary pale skin. When I was growing up and went to high school, I discovered the rich white girls, a few yellow girls, their imported cotton dresses, their cashmere sweaters, their curly hair, and I thought that I should have what these lucky girls had. When I was growing up, I hungered for American food, American styles, coded, white, and even to me, a child born of Chinese parents, being Chinese was feeling foreign, was limiting, was un-American. When I was growing up and when white man wanted to take me out, I thought I was special, an exotic gardenia, anxious to fit the stereotype of an oriental chick.
When I was growing up, I felt ashamed. Some yellow men, their small bones, their frail bodies, they're spitting on the streets, they're coughing, they're lying in sunless rooms, shooting themselves in the arms. When I was growing up, people would ask if I were Filipino, Polynesian, Portuguese. They named all colors except white, the shell of my soul, but not my dark, rough skin. When I was growing up, I felt dirty. I thought that God made white people clean, and no matter how much I bathed, I could not change, I could not shed my skin in the gray water. When I was growing up, I swore I would run away to purple mountains, houses by the sea with nothing over my head, with space to breathe, uncongested with yellow people in an area called Chinatown. In an area I learned was a ghetto, one of my many hearts of Asian America. I know now that once I longed to be white. How many more ways, you ask? Haven't I told you enough?
Thank you. You could introduce yourselves. Yeah, Sangeeta, you can
Yeah.
present
Thank you.
yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the opportunity. Good evening, everybody. Hello, ma'am. It was great.
That was
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
that was wonderful. That was a wonderful presentation, and
Thank you.
yeah, the struggles of this Chinese girl growing up in this white majority. You presented it so beautifully. You were longing to be white and being
Yes.
ashamed of her skin and all that. So.
Thank,
The process of growing up in America at the same time being a part of the Chinese culture, I think was extremely well presented, beautifully presented. Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. The idea was given by our dear HOD, Dr. Maria Preeti, ma'am. And it is, I think she did this presentation earlier, and it is a privilege to carry that tradition and doing it in the online platform here. Yeah, so it was ma'am's idea. And coming to the poem, the idea to fit in, like any girl, be it an immigrant or any girl who belongs anywhere, there is this teenage dilemma whether you're good enough. You always want to fit into the majority, and it takes a while to understand that you have your own uniqueness, and it takes a while for, I just look at it more in a feminine aspect more than being a multicultural view. So any girl would have gone through this feeling of trying to fit in, and to looking up to the standards of the beauty standards, and this confusion all of us would have gone through. I mean, we would have experienced it in our lives as young teens or young girl children. So the idea to fit in, and who is setting these rules for us, who is setting the standards of beauty, and who determines how we should grow up and how we should look. So the idea of self acceptance. So I just feel that this acceptance towards oneself, it's more of self realization than trying to make others validate on how your life should be. So we should decide on the fact that how be it our education, be it our looks or career, I think we should have control over these aspects than letting others entering into that circle and thrusting it on us. So it's more of, I just view it more like a self realization. You know who you are, and it just not comes so easily. It takes time. It takes a lot of experience. You have to meet a lot of people, you have to hear a lot of comments, and then only you evolve as the person with your own personality, and you prove yourself. So it's more of self realization, where you go through the process, and then you feel that you know where you belong, you know what you're good at. And it's not necessary that you have to uh, follow what the majority is thrusting on you, and you have your own identity and uniqueness. And it's more of learning and self realization. I just recently saw a movie, Encanto. It's a Disney movie, and I'm just so obsessed with that movie. I hope many of you here would have watched that movie, and if you have not watched, please watch it. It's all about identity. Usually these Disney princesses, I mean Disney characters, they have this stereotypical image of you being in a particular shape and color and hair, etc. And there is an evolution in the characters in Disney movies. Sorry, I'm deviating, but I just like to talk about this movie because it talks about identity and self realization. So in that movie, how the protagonist tries to fit into a family where everybody has magical powers, and she's the only one without the magical power. And ultimately towards the end of the movie, it's like she is the real magic. She does not have any different magical supernatural powers, but then she's just being a common girl, but she is the magic that brings the family together. So it's such a beautiful movie. So when I just read Nelly Wong, I could just relate it to the recent Encanto, which I just saw in Hotstar. So I just wish all of you. And why I came to, why I quoted the movie, I mean, talked about the movie is because we cannot relate to it. All of us can relate to it. Of being a woman specific, I mean, especially we can all relate to the aspect of self realization, identity, and where we belong, and we should never give up on that identity and the uniqueness that is there within. Yes, thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
Another writer also who writes on this is Amy Tan. Amy
Yeah.
Tan, many of
Yes.
her writings are also based on this.
Yes. Yes.
Particularly since she is a Chinese American also.
Yes. Yes.
She speaks about how she tried very hard to fit in, and then
Fit-
she eventually finds her own voice,
yes.
and she realizes that that is the best way of expressing herself when she has her own voice to speak of.
Yes.
I really liked how you brought in the Disney movie also, to relate both. That brings it alive. So
Yes.
no,
Yes.
that was a wonderful presentation. Priya,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yes.
would you like to contribute to the
Yes.
discussion?
Priya would.
Yeah. Good evening. Yeah, Preeti ma'am. Yes.
Yes.
You were the other. I just said that you are the other presenter.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ma'am. And it was great. It's a great opportunity. I think myself and Sangeeta, we just discussed how to present this using this mask. It was ma'am's idea. Like you cover yourself, don't give up your identity. This poem is all about identity. So when you hide yourself, we don't know who the speaker is. You tend to have your own idea about the voice. So when you reveal yourself, when you reveal your face, bare face, you will have another identity. So this poem here, it's about how, as an immigrant, she's able to face all these questions in her life. The poem, when I read the poem, it's full of rhetorical questions. How she longed to be a white person, the stereotypical identity crisis which an immigrant faces, where he wants to belong. She wants to belong to this group. So the speakers often looked at into skin, a skin tone, being calling herself how she wants to become a white person, her obsession with white. So these are all the things with traditionally in Asian countries, the fair is beautiful. You should have a long hair. You should dress up in this way. These are stereotypical things which we are from our younger days. You shouldn't cross your legs and sit in front of elders. These are the certain stereotypical things we are being tuned in from our younger days. So here the poem questions all these things. So she realizes at the end of the poem, she realizes that how it is impossible things when she says, haven't I told you enough? Her longing to be accepted by the society, the so-called standards of the society. That is what here she brings out. And it's full of agony. When you look at this poem, it's full of agony where she expresses through the poem how she feels in a minority society, how she longs to be white, how the narrator refrains this point of view again and again. She uses this, she expresses this identity with those people where she thinks this is her home, but she cannot be accepted. And the home which she is far away from is not her home. The adopted home is not now, it's her home. So these are the questions which culture brings up. Multiculturalism talks about, identity crisis talks about. At the end of the poem, it is ends with a question. Haven't I told you enough? What is that I'm going through? So it is kind of addressing to us also. So when you see, for 1 second for this, we see advertisements on so many things, are standardization of what is beauty, what men should do, what women should do. So all these things, it's Cadbury's advertisement now, the boy is coming running to the out of the pavilion and giving a chocolate. These are breaking down the barriers. It is just a small thing. When men advertise for a kitchen product or something or the other. So these are small steps we can see as a result of people from different culture when you put their head together, they come up with a slogan or something or the other, the picture, the visual, all these things can change. So that is what this when I was young, so when we were young, we were also was tuned in all these traditional myth ideas, this is what we should do. But somehow or the other, we on our own should bring up all these, break down these barriers, these walls which is erected. So that is what I feel. That is one of the, I just recently read this. I think I like this poem very much. Thanks, Preeti ma'am, for recommending this.
Thank you, Priya and Sangeeta. That was a wonderful performance. You set the mood actually for the paper presenters. Of trying to assimilate at the same time a poem of resistance, a poem that brings in the questions about gender and gender scripts and all that. So I think we've really started off on a high note, as it were. Now I think we can move on to the paper presentations. We will start with um, the first paper presenter, Dr. Vanitha R. She is an assistant professor at the Department of English at Anna Adarsh College for Women, Chennai. She's been a trainer for business English and for verbal aptitude component for the CAT exams, and has been a part of the team that worked on the new syllabus for professional English course for arts and science colleges in Tamil Nadu, and has also contributed to the new syllabus for the BA English stream of the University of Madras. She served as a teaching fellow in the non-fiction category at the Kenyan IITN Writing Workshop conducted by Kenyon College, Ohio, in the US, and IIT Madras at the IIT campus. She is associated with the Cambridge Assessment English as a resource person. Apart from publishing creative and critical writings in reputed journals, she has also contributed book chapters. At the college, she is a faculty coordinator for Ambrosia, the literary discussion and debating forum, and has been in charge of the community outreach program of the department. Her paper is on the essence of plurality in Shashi Tharoor's Riot. Before we begin, just to remind the presenters, your presentation is 15 minutes duration, and we'll take the questions at the end of all the presentations. So over to you, Vanitha.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the introduction, and hope I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, Vanitha, you are.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction, and thank you, Dr. Preeti Srinivasan, for giving me this opportunity. It's really nice to come back to the Department of English Queen Mary's College and to do this. And good to meet Srilatha ma'am as well. Thank you. I will be sharing a PowerPoint presentation. It's a short one. So, can I, ma'am?
Yes.
Is my PowerPoint visible, ma'am?
Yes.
So this is my presentation. This is for the research department, research club of Queen Mary's College. So the title, as ma'am said, is The Essence of Plurality in Shashi Tharoor's Riot. I've seen this one novel and I've looked at plurality and multiculturalism and plurality. I've seen them as synonyms. Okay. So I've looked at how multiculturalism, what we want to look at is what we see. So if we are looking at it as a mosaic of images, and it's a kaleidoscope. So every time you change it, you get a different viewpoint. And what you choose to see, are you seeing one particular pattern? Are we seeing, a whole range of images? What are we seeing? Okay. And do we want to see what images are we looking at? Are we looking at perfect images? Are we looking at blurred images? What are we looking at? So multiculturalism, I feel, is broadly like that. What you want to see is what you see. Okay. And it's everything. Okay, so the prism through which we see, the kaleidoscope with which we see, every time changes, and what we see. So every person has a different perception of multiculturalism, and this is just one perception. Okay, the one discussed in the novel. So I've tried to look at it in terms of binaries, open, closed viewpoints, objective, colored viewpoints, passionate and logical arguments. And this paper discusses Riot in terms of how multiculturalism is expressed in all these ways: culture, country, religion, idea, caste, creed, everything. So here I would like to bring these two viewpoints here of Patricia Waugh and Neil Lucy, okay, where they speak about Patricia Waugh talks about how monoculturalism, supposes singularity. There's only one thing, and the danger is that we extol sameness. Everything is the same, and we extol this over differences, and these differences need to be appreciated. As Preeti ma'am said in her introduction, it is the differences that need to be appreciated, and that is the primary crux. And we move from there to a lot of other things now. So, and Neil Lucy again, we are trying to look at how nothing is singular, nothing is pure. She says everything is a mixture today. What we see is not, there is nothing called pure or original or something that singularly stands by itself. Everything is a mixture, an amalgamation, a confluence of different things. So, because this novel is an Indian novel, I try to look at it in terms of implications of multiculturalism in the Indian context. Culture, as we all know, is a site of contestation and competition. So, there's a free play of different elements. What are the elements that we see? Again, the idea of mosaic and the kaleidoscope. Different element. What we want to see and how do we want to see, and how our perception changes every time we see it from a different perspective. And historical multiculturalism. This is important in the Indian context because India has been a country that's been ruled by different people at different points in time. So our multiculturalism has been the evolution of so many people ruling us over so many years. So this is important. So in the Indian context, multiculturalism is one we have to look at it in terms of contestation and competition, where there are different cultures, different entities competing for that same space. And historical multiculturalism, which is a period of evolution. We look at history in terms of multiculturalism. How does Tharoor contribute, or his contribution as an author here for the novel? Being an international diplomat, growing up in different places in India and serving in different capacities abroad, he has a unique perspective. There's an insider perspective and there's an outsider perspective that Tharoor has. The insider perspective is he's aware of the contradiction, really confounding, and he also is aware of the confluences. Where do we meet and where do we diverge? That awareness is very, very acute in the writing. That understanding that comes from being both an insider and an outsider, somebody who knows how India is and somebody who knows how the world views India. And the outsider perception, where it's simply confounding. You're not able to understand how opposites blend, and yet there is violence, yet there is extremism. So how can India survive like this, where there is confluence on one side, and then there is competition, and then there is violence also on the other side. So it becomes very incomprehensible as an outsider. And this sort of multicultural setup, where we have everything blended together, is what he's trying to explore in the novel. So it's really a cultural conundrum. India is a complex cultural conundrum, is what we all have heard about, and this is showcased in the novel. Okay, he looks at it as a landscape of collusion and collision. Okay, so there is both interaction and diversion. Okay, deviation from each other. Characters come together and then they move away from each other. Okay, and all these characters are very, very different from each other in every possible way. So it's a careful construction of looking at different people from different sectors of life, different strata of society. And he speaks of India as polyglot, polychrome, and polyconfessional. Okay. So I just like to have, this is just the characters. I'm not going into the storyline. I'm not going into anything else. I'm just looking at how multiculturalism is reflected in the novel. So we are looking only at the bare bones of the paper. So the characters here, it is set in Zalilgarh. Zalilgarh is supposed to be a communally sensitive small town, more like a village in North India. Okay, this is where the novel is set. And these are the characters here. So you have a very interesting mix of characters. The district magistrate, like the district collector, he's the district collector, the district magistrate here, Lakshman, who's an upper caste Hindu, educated in a Christian institution, and now working in this, laid back, backward town that doesn't really, he is able to, he's not really able to understand how people think here. So it takes a really long time for him to settle down to understanding how people view things. Okay, and then we have Priscilla Hart, who's an American student volunteering with an NGO which works with population control and reproductive rights. She is a believing Christian and she wants to change the world. Okay, she really wants people to know what their rights are. Okay, so and then you have Ram Charan Gupta, who's a Hindu religious leader, and then Professor Sarwar, who's a Muslim academic and scholar, and then there is Gurinder Singh, who's the Commissioner of Police, who's a firebrand Sikh, and the this is the primary set of characters. There are secondary characters, and there are tertiary characters as well. There are different incidents that bring in so many characters now and then. But everything is told from the point of view of that person. Okay, so it's like a diary entry. So you have different people from different viewpoints. So when you have Ram Charan Gupta talking about the history of Hinduism, he talks about how Hinduism evolved and all that. You also have Professor Sarwar talking about how Islam developed in India. Okay, the history of Islam in India. So you have both the viewpoints. He's trying as far as possible in the novel to juxtapose these opinions and ensure that everybody has their space. Okay. The one thing about the novel is that it is objectively articulated. There's completely objective articulation. I'm not able to see the chat box because I'm full screen on the PPT. I'm hearing the.
There's no need. You can.
I can.
Yeah.
Yes. The thing about this novel is that there is objective articulation. At no point in time does Tharoor intervene. He doesn't. There's no attempt to temper the arguments, to rationalize, to maneuver, to streamline anybody's thought process. He doesn't talk about political correctness. Everybody has their space, and he projects it from their point of view. So, depending on their upbringing, depending on their education, depending on the circumstances in which they are brought up, the things that they are exposed to, every person has their own point of view, and he presents it like that. Okay, there is no. So you look at the novel and you understand peculiar prejudices that you're never really open to otherwise. Okay, and then there are open biases, there are adulterated opinions. Okay, so there's nothing that he hides. If I am this person, I will think this way, and this is how I have to. Okay, and this is where the novel gets its authenticity from. That multiculturalism, that exposure, that multi-religious angle, that plurality comes from the fact that all opinions are not polished or refined. They're just exposed as they are. Okay, how characters would behave. So, and the tone of the novel is very, very purposefully non-judgmental. Okay? There are some stark truths and realities that are very, very disturbing at some point in time. But nevertheless, he puts it across in as non-judgmental a way as possible. And he presents India as deeply divided, yes, yet a successfully united nation. And all groups, all faiths, ideologies, everybody that they have their place in the sun. There's space for everybody. They compete for the space, yet there is space for everybody, is what he's trying to say in the novel. So secularism, this is from other essays of Tharoor, which I've quoted in the paper. So this will be, for the West, he says secularism is an absence of religion. But in the East, it's a profusion of religions. You have a lot of religions, and what you choose is your right. So there is that individual freedom to choose your religion. You don't have to say, I don't have to subscribe to any religion. So which is an essential difference that he feels. The idea of perception of religion itself is different from the East and the West. Okay. And he talks about why India is so multicultural, multi-religious, and has that plurality is because Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism originated in the country, and the country has welcomed other religions to open arms. So you have a whole lot of people practicing different faiths because some originated here and some came from outside, but you still have faithful followers. Okay. And he says Indians believe the chronic pluralism of our civilization, of which secularism is merely the official. Okay, so he feels it's a part of our identity, the chronic pluralism as being a part of the Indian identity. Okay. And all these elements are weaved together into the plot line of the ideas that you're free to choose your religion, that every religion has its space here, and pluralism runs through society. Okay. And what are the cross-cultural differences, experiences, and cross-cultural references here? They come from the notion that Priscilla Hart, who's one of the primary characters in the novel, she's an American student who's come in from America to work with this NGO. Okay, and we have Lakshman talking to her about how the civil service is a craze in India. She doesn't understand it. Everybody wants to be a civil servant. Everybody wants to be an IAS officer, or serve in the civil services. That craze. And then the American notion of privacy. There's Lakshman tells her that there is no sense of when he looks at her diary, she says, "You can't look at my diary. It's my personal thing." Okay, he says there's nothing like personal in India. Her sense of privacy is actually more or less. He finds it very funny. He finds her sense of privacy very funny because he feels Americans have an exaggerated sense of privacy. And the weather. The weather is something that's discussed over and over again in a lot of novels, and this too is not an exception. When Catherine Priscilla's mother comes to India, she says it's like a celestial oven has opened. Okay, and that's how hot the weather is. And this is a typical small town in North India, which is probably landlocked, so it's obviously boiling in summer. And when we look at the cross-cultural references, there's one particular reference that I want to make here, which is when Priscilla Hart dies as a result of the riot. There are so many things that contributed to it, and she dies. So her mother comes to India to try and understand the circumstances in which her daughter dies. She's not able to comprehend. She's able to bring in the bits and the pieces, but they don't gel. She's not able to get a finality on her daughter's death. What actually caused it? Okay, despite the fact that she's able to understand the circumstances that led to it, the final pieces falling in place, that doesn't happen for her. So she finally makes her peace because she has to leave India and there should be a sense of closure for her. So she finally makes her peace in a very, very Indian way where she says, it doesn't make sense. She knows her daughter's death because she's not connected in any way to India or to the riot or to any of these people, except that she chose to come and work here as a part of that NGO. Okay, so she says it doesn't make sense except perhaps in the terms India believes in. She talks about how destiny, fate, karma. Okay, there's no other answer that she has. So she says maybe that's the only way I can reconcile to my daughter's death. And how does Tharoor see pluralism? These are from different essays that he's written, not in the text, but in different essays which I've quoted in. India is fundamentally a pluralist state. He says geographically, historically, culturally, ethnographically, everywhere India is like. Okay, so it's a culture of multiplicities, okay, a culture of differences. And he says every imaginable color, creed, caste, cuisine, and consonant live and thrive. And I think the operative word here is not just live, but also thrive. Okay, so he says people of different colors, all this exists. They don't just exist, but they also thrive. And while he talks about all this, this novel, Riot, is set in the times of the Babri Masjid demolition. Okay, so it's a very, very sensitive space that he's occupying in the novel when he's writing about it. Okay. And he does this balancing act. While his pride is palpable, we can see his pride of being Indian, that India is a multi-hued fabric and all that. And he talks about it, but he also laments at some point in time in another essay of his where he says, not in this novel, but in another essay of his where he says, communal violence is a sad reality and an avoidable stain on the map. So he does understand that the fabric of India is multi-hued, but yet there is this awareness that communal violence is a stain on it. Okay. And the novel is not just necessarily a chest thumping session saying, I'm proud of Indian plurality. It does talk about it, but it ends on a very, very somber note where he says, we need to coexist. It's a compelling necessity. It's not just for anything else, but it's a necessity that we coexist because we need each other. And he speaks of the hard-hitting truth at the end of every riot. This is another essay, not this novel, because this is a novel. I'm quoting from his other essays. This is a story, so it's there's a storyline, but this is from another essay of his. Like he talks about how at the end of every riot, okay, when the madness passes as it always does, what is left behind? What is left amid the wreckage is the belated recognition of intertwined destinies, that we need each other for survival. We need to coexist. Okay. And this is brought out in the novel. Okay. And acknowledging differences, yes, it portrays the reactions of different people. Okay, so you understand where this comes from. When a character speaks in a particular way, you understand where this comes from. So that is something that the novel is very, very empathetic about. Okay, if you grow up in a certain circumstance, you are exposed to a certain set of beliefs and ideas, and you grow up with those set of beliefs and ideas, and that is what you will reflect. Okay, so that way he is very forgiving of his characters, and his primary idea is to portray things as they are. And each character has a different take, looks at a different angle, and holds a different belief system and value system. And this is what he's trying to say. Multicultural, the idea of plurality, all this exists because there are different people with different mindsets and different value systems and belief systems as well. Okay, and they choose to look at different angles. He opines, understanding the point of view of those with whom we profoundly disagree is the first step towards learning to create a society which manages such disagreement. Okay. So this is another essay of his where he talks about how we need to make that conversation. We need to step forward and say, I agree to disagree, and only then there is truth. Okay. And again, this is he reflects the views of Morena Lewis when he says, commonalities among people cannot be recognized unless differences are acknowledged. You can find what's common only when our differences are highlighted.
Vanitha,
Yes.
yes, you are concluding because you are 3 minutes on.
Yes, ma'am.
So will you
Only one more slide now, 2 more
Sure.
slides. So this is my conclusion. Indian culture is the expression of vital plurality and productive diversity. And this is by Purucharan Vera, who talks about this diversity and plurality. And the novel stands as a testimony to it. So it blends elements of everything. There's history, there's religion, there's culture, politics, all of it. Okay. And Tharoor proves his point. He only wants to say this again and again, and it's repetitively seen through the novel, that the singular thing about India is that you can only speak of it in the plural. So, how can we describe the complex, cultural, complicated, and confusing mosaic that India is? This is my last slide. Next slide is my last slide. Okay. Can there be a way in which we can describe how it's such a complex, colorful, complicated, and confusing mosaic that India is? Can we describe it? So this is what he says. So, these are my references.
I think the Thali metaphor is from his essay, India Multiplicity.
Yeah, yes.
Uh,
Yes, ma'am. This is from the elephant, the tiger, and the self.
yes. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Vanitha.
I'll just.
Yes. Very succinct presentation as somebody has just written. But before we move into the questions, we'll have all the other paper presentations as well.
Yes.
Now, for want of time, we'll just move on to the next. The next presentation is by two lecturers from the Department of English, Queen Mary's College. Dr. N. Sivagami, guest lecturer at Queen Mary's College, done her PhD in co-criticism, and she has presented and published papers both in national and international conferences. She's published papers in reputed journals like Virtuosa, EduVentura, etc. Her areas of interest includes eco-criticism, human-animal studies, ecofeminism, and cultural studies. Fathima Naseem, I'm sorry, I've got my... yes. Fathima Naseem is a guest lecturer of English at Queen Mary's College. From 2018, she is interested in fine arts and psychology, and she has published papers specializing in psychoanalysis. She's conducted calligraphy workshops for students in Queen Mary's College, and they will be presenting on multi-ethnic British poetry.
Shall I start, ma'am? Thank you for the bio note, ma'am. And thank you for the HOD ma'am for giving this wonderful opportunity to present my paper on multiculturalism. I begin my presentation with a quote. Literature can fuel the imagination to show possibilities instead of boundaries, reflecting nature's law that growing things defy boundaries, said by Brooks. Literature that evokes sensibility to social issues like multicultural literature greatly enhance social studies in helping students develop the ability to think for themselves. To define multiculturalism in literature is about the socio-cultural experience of underrepresented or marginalized groups. The literature includes those who fall outside the mainstream of categories such as race, ethnicity, religion, gender, etc. This literature is written by those who are members of these underrepresented groups and those who fall within the category of mainstream. Multiculturalism has been formally adopted as an official policy in nations such as Canada, Australia, United States, Britain, Netherlands, etc., for reasons that vary from country to country. Multicultural policies influence the structures and decisions of government to ensure that political and economical resources are allocated equitably to all represented cultural groups. Multiculturalism is a controversial issue in some societies. Some political segments within the United States and some European nations view multiculturalism as Huntington says as a policy that promotes group stereotyping and negative outgroup feelings and undermines national unity, social integration, and even security. In alternative to multiculturalism, emphasizes policies of monoculturalism, assimilation, nativism, and thereby that the majority-based macro culture is substantive, foundational, and it provides the moral center for the society. During 19th century, idea of nationalism transformed the way through about Europeans about the state. Existing states were broken up and new ones created. The new nation states were founded on the principle that each nation is entitled to its own sovereignty and to protect and preserve its own unique culture and history. The 19th century nation state developed an area of politics. The most important was compulsory primary education in the national language itself was often standardized by the Linguistic Academy, and regional languages were ignored and suppressed. Some nation states pursued violent policies like cultural assimilation and ethnic cleansing. Some countries in the European Union have introduced policies for social cohesion, integration, and assimilation. Demands for territorial and cultural autonomy have been crucial for most indigenous groups, whereas immigrants typically demand equal treatment and non-discrimination. According to the United States Census, United States is the third largest country in the world with a population of more than 332 million. In addition to indigenous Americans who were already living in the continent, the population of the United States was built on immigration from other countries. New immigrants moved to the United States every 666 seconds, according to the census. Continuous mass immigrations was the future of United States economy and society since the first half of the 19th century. The idea of the melting pot is a metaphor in which different cultures have contributed their own distinct flavors to American culture, just as the cultures from around the world have influenced American culture. This is different from multiculturalism as it is defined above, which does not include complete assimilation and integration. The melting pot tradition coexists with the belief in national unity. In contrast with the melting point, which emphasizes the combination of parts into single whole, a salad bowl or a toasted salad is a metaphor for the way a multicultural society can integrate different cultures while maintaining their separate identities. Multiculturalism began as a part of the pragmatic movement at the end of the 19th century in Europe and the United States. It was partly in response to a new wave of the European imperialism in sub-Saharan African and the massive immigrants of Southern and Eastern Europe of the United States. The educational approach to multiculturalism has spread to the grade school as a school system tried to rework their curricula to introduce students to diversity, often on the grounds that it's important for minority students to see themselves represented in the classrooms. Moving on to Canada, Canadian society is often depicted as being very progressive, diverse, and multicultural. Multiculturalism is adopted as official policy of the Canadian government. Immigrants have tend to settle in the major urban areas. These urban enclaves have served as a home away from home for immigrants to Canada. In Canada, there are several ethnocentric communities with many diverse backgrounds, including Chinese, Indian, Italian, and Greek. Canadian Chinatown are the most prolific type of ethnic enclave found in major cities. They're talking about Australia. Australia is a vibrant multicultural country. Australia's Australians who identify with more than 270 ancestries since 1945, almost 7 million people have migrated to Australia. Australia has a unique history that has shaped the diversity of its people, their culture, and lifestyle today. Three major contributors to Australian demographic makeup are the diverse indigenous population, a British colonial past, and extensive imagination from many different countries. The culture of Australia is a Western culture derived primarily from Britain, but also influenced by the unique geography of the Australian continent, the diverse input of Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islanders, and other Oceania people. The history of immigrations and the multi-plural policy in Australia has been a long journey of facilitating an environment where migrants can fully participate and add value to the economy. The geographic mobility of labor helps to increase the spread of knowledge and diverse experience among countries, which led to advancement in technology and innovation. The increasing number of international studies that Australia hosts for higher educations have more than doubled in real terms over past 2 years. Multiculturalism focus on the collective assertion of identity and claim to difference, which has been worldwide trend since the upcoming decades of 20th century, must be understood on the background perceived challenges to cultural uniqueness and selfhood. The poem that I have taken for the study with regard to multiculturalism is Hurricane Hits England by Grace Nichols. Grace Nichols was born in Georgetown, Guyana in 1950 and grew up in a small country village on Guyana's coast and moved to England in 1977. Her work is influenced by the history and culture of her homeland, in particular the oral storytelling tradition with its fantastic folk tales and the landscape and its rural tasks. I'll move on to the poem. Hurricane Hits England. It took a hurricane to bring her closer to the landscape. Half the night she lay awake, the howling ship of the wind, its gathering rage like some dark ancestral spectra, fearful and reassuring. Talk to me, hurricane. Talk to me, Oya. Talk to me, Shango and Haddy, my sweeping back home cousin. Tell me why you visit an English coast and what is the meaning of old tongues reaping havoc in new places. The blinding illumination, even as you short circuit us into her darkness. What is the meaning of trees falling heavy as veils? Their crusted roots, their cratered graves. Oh, why is my heart unchained? Tropical oya of the weather. I am aligning myself to you. I am following the movement of your winds. I am riding the mystery of your storm. Ah, sweet mysteries, come to break the frozen lake in me, shaking the foundations of very trees within me. That the earth is the earth is the earth. Though a hurricane, I'm going to the explanation of the poem. Though the hurricane is the tragic event in this instant, it served as a subject of the poem in a positive way. The poem begins in a third person and shifts to first person as the poem progresses. Poem evokes the homesickness and disconnection with the people can feel while living in a new, unfamiliar landscape. When the hurricane first arrives, it seems to make the speaker deeply aware of her longing for her native land. She asks the hurricane to talk to her and make her think of her cousin, Hattie, the name of the massive hurricane that hits the Caribbean in 1961. The speaker compares the hurricane to old tongue or the language of the speaker. She addresses it as Oya, god of wind, lightning, death, rebirth, to talk to her. The speaker further states that a hurricane was the one thing that helped her feel more connected to the new country. She was sleepless half the night listening to the whistling wind of the storm, which was like a huge ship as the wind built strength and power, which was like some dark ghost of her ancestors comforting her and gave her optimistic sign of mental relief from a avoidable plight. She wonders why she feels the hurricane has unchained her heart. Speaking directly to the hurricane, she observes that she will align herself with it and further says, I'm following the movement of your wind. Ironically, she has found some solace in the hurricane, which reveals the intense hassle in her life as a newcomer to England. However, having spent some time in England, the hurricane seems like an old friend. She happily welcomes it because it reminds her experience of being at her home. Speaker refers to her reaction to the hurricane as a sweet mystery. She says that the hurricane has broken the frozen lake that was inside her. This represents that she has been void of feeling since migrated to England. Her heart had become hard like a frozen lake. Now the hurricane has broken up the feeling like herself once more. She implies the way the hurricane shook the foundation of her very tree came to realize that though she came from different places and had experienced different upbringing, and she was a part of the different culture. In the end, all people share some basic human experiences. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I proceed?
Yeah, Ma'am, I think this is is this the same paper? You are presenting, both of you are presenting in the same paper, is it?
Different one, ma'am.
Oh, different one, yes. I'm so sorry. I was under the impression that they were presenting the same paper.
That no, there's different poets,
I
different
see.
poets.
That's it. Okay. Please start. Please start.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sharing my presentation. Is it visible, ma'am? The presentation?
Yes, yes, it is.
Yes, ma'am. So,
Yes,
good evening, everybody. I'm Fathima Naseem, guest lecturer of English, Queen Maris College. I thank our HOD ma'am for giving me this opportunity to present on multiculturalism. So, my topic is multicultural view of Imtiaz Dharker's minority. So, can anyone tell me, like, why have I posted this picture in this presentation?
Like the several colors in rainbow, a culture should also have different groups of people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the contrast. Thank you, Senavir. So it's the contrast of the sun on a sunny day when we have light drizzle. We can see a beautiful rainbow, which is a spectrum of colors. Similarly, multiculturalism multiculturalism is the spectrum of different people from different culture. So that's why I've posted it. I wanted to begin the presentation in a colorful manner. What is multiculturalism? As everybody have told it, I want to say it in a very simple manner. Like it's preservation of different cultural identities, race, and ethnicity within a unified society. It's not just about the cultural identity, race, ethnicity. Apart from that, we have class, creed, religion. It goes on and on. So as you could see in the picture, it's like a collage of people, different people belong to different culture, race, etc. I compare it to the multiculturalism with prestige in literature. That is to celebrate the diversity and not mocking, as it was done before. So it's a period of renaissance, I could call, wherein we all celebrate the differences. So I compare multiculturalism to a bouquet of flowers, where a different set of flowers with leaves and few decorative items put
can you
together.
tell me which poet and poem? You can screen the poem. No, I was trying to. Oh,
In Minority by
okay.
Imtiaz
You can
Tharoor.
send it to me, and you can also screen. I'll tell you when to screen.
Yes. So
Contrast makes it beautiful. Multiculturalism, contrast make multiculturalism beautiful. I don't think any other nation other than India could be a best example for multiculturalism where the differences are being celebrated. India by itself is a diversified nation. I would like to begin with a quote of Imtiaz Thakur, uh, and this is it. I learned to love the thing that has to be erased, the thing I may not be allowed to keep, sand that runs away beneath my running feet. So this itself describes like what kind of person she is. Like she celebrates differences. As everybody said initially, there were a lot of comments which we have to hear, and everybody will have to undergo a phase of acceptance. And once that acceptance is done, we would like to explore. So that's the same case of Imtiaz Thakur. So Imtiaz Thakur is a Pakistani-born British poet, artist, video filmmaker. She calls herself Scottish Calvinist Muslim. So she splits her life between England and India. We all know that India got divided as India and Pakistan in 1947. So she finds her root even in India and Pakistan. As she was brought up in Scotland, she finds her root there also. She was bound to three cultures. So I found this person would be a right one to talk about multiculturalism. She has won Queen medal, gold medal for English poetry. While taking this author, there were assumptions like I chose this author because this author is a Muslim, and so hence I chose, since I'm also a Muslim. So I was born with a lot of assumptions like that, wherein even in my childhood, people would ask me when there is a cricket match between India and Pakistan, who are you supporting to, India or Pakistan? Of course, I'm an Indian. So these stereotypes are to be overcome, where you have to accept yourself. The self-acceptance, as Sangeeta ma'am said, like it is to be celebrated. The poem Minority. So it is a poem from anthology Postcards from God. It talks about the multiple experience the author faces in different countries. So she's feeling alienated both in birthplace as well as in the foreign country. So in the beginning, it seems to be like she is unable to accept herself. She feels very alienated. And at the end, she starts to celebrate the difference. The identity crisis is there within the author, within the poet. So she begins the poem like, I was born a foreigner. So throughout the poem, she talks about herself. The pronoun I has been repeated. She talks about her self-experience. She says, how could one be a foreigner? At least in your birthplace, you're not a foreigner. But she says, I'm a foreigner both in my country of birth as well as in my foreign country. How is it even possible? She feels there is no sense of belonging, the separation, the otherness she could feel. She feels like she's been excluded. She feels like she's unwanted in the society. Who am I? Where am I standing? Am I standing in my foreign country, or am I in my birthplace? That was always there within her mind. She's used beautiful similes, one related to literature and the other one related to food. So the line say, there's a line like a clumsily translated poem. So I feel that the role of translator is very big. When you try to translate any piece of work from one language to other, it has to be done in such a way that the essence is not getting affected. So I feel multicultural person can do the job better, even though they feel they cannot accept them in the beginning. At the end of the day, we could find like they could do a better job because they are from different cultures. They are able to make it out, so they could do justice to the translation. That's what I believe in. And she also gives one more simile: unexpected aftertaste of cardamom or neem. So here, like we all love payasam, kheer, different kheers we like it. So in order to avoid that staunch smell of milk, which many of us don't like it, we add cardamom. And once that essence is there, we relish it when we eat. But once we bite the cardamom in the payasam, we have that pungent smell, taste in our tongue, which we really dislike it. So that's what she's trying to say. I feel like that. I feel like I've been... the cardamom is bitten in a payasam, where you wanted to relish it, and at the end you end up it's something messy. So she connects food and literature. There are some sensory images which has been portrayed by the poet like this, which really makes us feel what the author had been gone through, as everyone of us at some point or the other have such experience. We could really relate to the poet. There was always language barrier for the author since she was born in Pakistan and she was brought up in Scotland. Like she was words stumble over into an unfamiliar taste. Like we all have seen babies talking, where it tumbles, like what should it know, what it should say, what it's there in the mind, but it's unable to convey what is to be. So something like that, the author feels, the poet feels like she is unable to convey what she wanted to. So she's puzzled, like how to convey it. I'm unable to convey in my mother tongue. I'm not even able to convey in my foreign language. These are all her experience in the beginning. So she calls cunning tripwire on tongue. So again, outcasting. She's been saying with the outcasted eyes, like, oh, don't you know English and you are living in Scotland? So that kind of made her feel like cunning tripwire on the tongue. So in the night, she thinks a lot. Nice here says about darkness, where she it also talks about the what to say. It also talks about the loneliness she had. She thinks a lot, like what could be done to this? What could she do? Where is she belonging to? So she wanted to try fight back for this language barrier, and a page doesn't fight back. She says at the end. So she feels that literature is the place where we have right to express. So she feels that this is where we could explore. So yeah, she feels like I could find solace through literature. And finally, after a phase, she's been accepted in the society. So she entered slowly. People began to talk. Initially, they didn't like her, the writing, and later people started to talk about them. And so finally, she entered into the corner of the home, which means she's been accepted. She's like just like a girl next door. She's been accepted in the society. She's recognized. That's what everybody expects. Not only the multicultural people, everybody expects some kind of recognition wherever we are. So she's not a stranger anymore. And her face has been recognized. There are no more outcast eyes. So she calls at the end as recognize it as your own. And so she ends with a positive note that everyone is a foreigner in the sense everybody, you are trying to be different. You look at me that I'm different, and you are also trying to be different. So everyone is a foreigner. So I'm one among them. I'm not to be I need not feel alienated anymore. I'm one among all of you. That's how she ends the poem. I would like to quote few examples of multicultural person like Priyanka Chopra. So she's an Indian model, actress, and singer. So by 12 years, she moved to US, and she faced a lot of bullying in her school, like Brownie, go back to your country, the color caste. Because of that, she was been bullied so much. But now she is moved from Bollywood to Hollywood star, where she was been bullied. Now she has been accepted. So her memoir Unfinished is a famous one, where she talks about all her experiences, whatever she has been going through. Even in our own country, she was not accepted in the beginning, and finally she rose to a star. The other person whom I would like to say is Mother Teresa. So the quote describes about herself: by blood, I am Albanian; by citizenship, an Indian; by faith, I am a Catholic nun. As to my calling, I belong to the world. As to my heart, I belong entirely to the heart of Jesus. So she even has that multicultural roots. I would like to say a small incident in her life wherein she was not accepted in the society. When she wanted to serve for people, people started spitting at her, and she said, I would accept all your, whatever you want to curse me or whatever you want to do, please do, give it in the left hand, I'll take it for myself. And please give me something in my right hand so that I could help the poor people. So she was initially not been accepted. And finally, people celebrate her now as a Saint Teresa of Calcutta. One more example is Rushnara Ali. Rushnara Ali is a Bangladeshi born British. So she is now an MP. So she is the first British Bengali to be elected in the House of Commons. So she was also faced a lot of criticism in the beginning, and at the end, she's now been recognized. Why I've chosen her is because we all know in 1905, Bangladesh got separated from India. It is also a part of India, so she has her roots even in India. I would like to quote some day-to-day life images which I related to multiculturalism, like a pickle. So pickle is like, it is a perfect mixture of a salt from the coastal areas of the sea, and a lemon which is grown in Gujarat, which is the highest procurer of lemon, and chili which is grown in Andhra Pradesh. So from three different places, you take these three things and you make a perfect pickle, which we all relish. Without we can eat pickle without anything. When you don't have any perfect side dish as well, we could eat it with it. So such a mixture. It's again it's like a mixture of everything, many different tastes. I would like to quote one small Tamil song here. Uli Thangum Karkal Dane Manmeedu Silayagum. So something like that. Nobody accepts a stone as such. When the stone has been transformed into a sculpture, we all really accept it. So the unwanted parts, whatever is there in the stone, has been removed. The criticism, the comments, which whatever we hear in the society, has been removed. And when it is transformed to sculpture, everybody admires what the beautiful sculpture is it. So that's how we have been celebrated. So I find like earlier the phase was like we are like stone, where in multiculturalism was not accepted, and now we have been transformed. We started celebrating ourselves. So now we are all transforming into a phase of sculpture where society starts to accept us. Finally, I would like to quote one more example here. Padma Shri Amai Mahalinga Nayak. So recently he got Padma Shri award. So why am I talking about him? He actually transformed a barren sloping hill into a fertile farm. We all know that people were criticized him. He actually dug a tunnel for water. He is a single man army who really tried a lot. Around for 30 years he have been trying, and for the fifth time when he was trying, he got water, and now he is growing a lot of cash crops like areca nut, coconut trees, banana, pepper vines, cocoa, etc. So when people criticized him in the beginning, now he's been celebrated. So when people said like there is a stone, you cannot get water, in contrast to it, he tried to dig a tunnel out of it, and he carried water from there, and the big acre of land, whatever he has, he's cultivating, and he's now standing as an example, not only just to the Karnataka where he belonged, but to the entire nation. Now everybody is celebrating him. That's how we should celebrate our differences. Initially, there will be criticism, but we should overcome everything, and finally, it's what we are. That only stands out. So, as a bouquet of flowers, as I quoted in the beginning, like I see multiculturalism as a bouquet of flowers, where different flowers together make a beautiful bouquet. That's how we are all. So, despite differences, we are all the same. We are all equal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fatima. That was a very inspiring presentation, actually. Talking about bringing in so many aspects of real life, and the creativity with which you put that through was amazing. So thank you very much to both Fatima and as well as to Sivagami. We'll move on quickly to the next presenter because I think we are running short of time. The final paper presentation is by Ms. M. Sangeeta, the art theatre enthusiast whose dramatization you just saw. She's a guest lecturer at the Department of English, Queen Mary's, and I invite her for her presentation.
Sangeeta, I don't think she's presenting. Sangeeta, are you presenting?
No, ma'am, sorry. The dramatization was done. I was going to do that. Sorry.
Right. So I think in that case, we have come to the end of our 3 papers, and the forum is open now for discussion. If there are any questions, you can first type it into the chat box, or you can unmute and ask questions. Okay, just to set the ball rolling, I'll just ask a question to Vanitha. Vanitha, in your book Riot, actually, I was just reminded of, I think Bharti was the person who spoke about how it is when we emphasize racial differences, when we emphasize a racial heritage, then there's a process of dehumanization. And when there is dehumanization, what happens is eventually that leads to discrimination. Discrimination will lead to genocide. But there's no genocide in Riot. There's only a killing. But how do you relate what Mukherjee says to what happens in the riot?
And Riot looks at the broader picture. It talks about what instigates people into a riot. So the actual murder, the actual rioting is only the latter part of it. It's actually very small, a very small part. The major part is what instigates people to think like this. So the focus on the book is more on the thinking process. Why do people engage in a riot? What makes them, kill another person?
Yeah,
So it's more of a
yeah. So sorry. So in that case, is this because there is this emphasis on differences? Uh,
Yes, ma'am. And it also talks about how upbringing and the exposure, the environment plays a role in the thinking of anybody. Okay, where are you brought up? How are you brought up? So we find that the more the exposure to other places, other people, the greater is their acceptance of others. Okay, and when people grow up in a small town and you're exposed to only a certain set of principles, a certain set of ideas, you tend to think that that is how the world is. So he I feel that whole idea of multiculturalism, I mean, plurality itself comes from the exposure to the world, and that is what he's trying to say. Okay, if you grew up like this, you will also become like this. So there's a lot of empathy more than anything else. We always, kind of look down on certain characters because they behave in a certain way. Here, there is a lot of empathy because he looks at it from, okay, this is where they come from, and so this is how they think. And if you have that kind of exposure, probably you with your exposure are more liberal in your attitude. And to understand that, maybe it's more of, I guess, if people read it, maybe policy makers or even Tharoor himself is now a policy maker, being an MP. But if they read it, they probably understand, the psychology behind all these people. So it's important not just for law, but to address it from where, from the place that they are in, the exposure that they have. So I feel that the latter part only deals with it's not just about the incident; it's about how people are
yes,
pushed into
that process. Yes, the process of
the
influence.
process. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Anything to our speakers?
Dr. Preeti,
Yes.
I also thought you could share with our students about multiculturalism as a policy, no? It's a
Mm.
with the relation to immigration,
Yes.
and because that word came about through these policies. So, uh, am I audible?
Uh,
Yes, you.
yes, were you speaking to me, ma'am?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes,
yes, yes.
yes. Yes. Maybe share a little bit about,
Uh,
it being a policy. In India, we don't have that policy of multiculturalism, no? Like
yes.
it's in America. So, yeah.
Yes. Now, I have to admit that I'm not really an expert on the policy aspect of it at all. But as far as both America and Canada and Australia
Australia.
are concerned, they have to make it. They had to make it a policy in the sense that because of the process of colonization, particularly because of that, the process of the colonizers coming in and taking over the land of the First Nation people, and you find that there is this process of resistance also, the process of resistance against the colonizers, and therefore they had to bring in a series of laws, particularly towards the 20th century. That is when the laws were formulated, and this had to be integrated into law, because only then could there be some kind of integration. Because the integration is never total. Because the integration is never total, you find that there are these different voices that come about, and many of these writings are actually writings of resistance, where you have people from different ethnicities voicing their predicament, the predicament in a society where there is a hegemonic culture, and for them trying to find identity of their own. Now, whether it is Imtiaz Dharker, and in fact, when that poem was presented, I was reminded of another poem of hers at the Lahore Karhai, and I was just fascinated by how you had these all these papers, Vanitha just spoke about how Tharoor presents multiculturalism as a thali, and Imtiaz Dharker also speaks about culture as food, and how she speaks about how each of the items, she says, roti, the naan is you, and the chicken, that is Auntie Hamida, and she speaks about food as different people, and how she identifies herself, and how she identifies her culture with the food that they used to eat, and how, because they belong to a different society, they have to find themselves in these places. Again, another link that I found was in the poem that was presented by Sivagami, where she speaks about the Caribbean hurricane, and Braithwaite, in one of his essays, he speaks about how in the Caribbean, because the blacks who had been brought in, they speak about their black English. I'm sure, I mean, many of you would have read that essay. They speak about the black English, and how black English, he says, is not a dialect, it is a language in itself. It is a language in itself, particularly because this is a language that has come in because of this multicultural idea. You had the blacks coming in, who had who came from different parts of the coast of Africa, and having come there, they had to find a means of communicating with one another. Therefore, they had to adopt the language of the colonizer, but they adapted it to suit their own purpose. And one of the things he speaks about is particularly the idea of the hurricane. He says, when you learn, when the colonizer teaches you something, the colonizer taught them about snow, and he says there's no such thing as snow that we are familiar with. What we need is words for hurricane. So when she was speaking about the hurricane, that was another thing that I was reminded of. So in the case of countries like America and Canada and Australia, these are countries that had to formulate laws in order to in order to give the people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds their own rights. As far as the laws themselves are concerned, I have to admit I'm no authority and I cannot speak on it. All I can speak of is the literary side of it, if that is all right.
Thank you, Madam. I love the way you took it
Yes.
from, um,
Mm.
colonization, from the idea of settlers
Yeah.
coming in, and how that putting it on that trajectory. I like that. Appreciated it. Taking it from there, where there was a need for a policy, you know, that happened in
Mm.
these colonized. So multiculturalism is a policy in places where there was colonization. So that's a very interesting observation as
Mm.
a policy.
Yeah, to add to it, I think to add to it, basically the Americans also, right? Their language, you were talking about language and the need for a particular language to, particular words to, convey certain ideas. Look at the Americans. They took the English, the new, and they made it a multicultural language today.
Yeah.
The language now incorporates aspects of what all the aspects, all different places in Europe, right? The same and then Korean and Vietnamese and American and everybody else, all the Chinatown. But particularly is one series on Netflix or something I saw about a convenience store. I was just watching that. I don't know whose story it is. I just watch a little off and on, and it's about a Korean family running a convenience store. Okay, they all have imagined stories about their past. And they imagined, or what you call, exhilarating stories about their past. But the children are all down to earth, right? They're living in America. The younger ones, the older ones have these, but the younger ones are here trying to fit in. Some ashamed of, I was just thinking that would be a very, see, some, when the very first presentation was made, that came to my mind. Some of them ashamed of their Korean background, some of them just taking it like that, trying to accommodate others also, Mexican, right? They are, some of them are happy to be with the Mexicans, some of them are happy to be with the Brits who are there. Everything, it's a kind of a mixture of everything, and I thought that was a very good presentation of multicultural values given to you without any kind of without touching anybody or trying to hurt anybody. The children are very conscious that the parents stress on their own identity. There's one Mr. Mehta also there, typically Indian family there in that group. So each one presented like that. So while the paper presenters were giving, of course, Tharoor being an international figure, he gives you the both the views just like that, without hurting, I mean, without trying to hurt, because he always gets into controversies. He tries not to hurt, and he gives you the exact presentation. This visual presentation of a convenience store, Kim or something, the Kim's Convenience or something it's called. It's a very nice presentation of the way in which they try to incorporate all the, but we were talking about the plurality, except one, the other two paper presenters, Vanitha and is that Fatima? Yes, one of them highlighting the what is the oneness through all the differences. The other one, of course, giving the other aspect of the presentation. It all the presenters were thorough, I think, and very. It was a very enlightening session. So I don't know whether the chairperson has anything else add to this particular, see, the gender aspect of it. If you can add anything to the gender aspect of this multicultural, because everything seems to have a gender perspective, every other theory.
Yes, that's true. That's true. In this, the gender aspect, of course, we have Priscilla, uh, in the novel by Vanitha, and
Yeah.
in the other person, Imtiaz Dharker, she speaks, I think, in her own person. The question, basically, I suppose, as far as multiculturalism is concerned, I am also reminded, as I said earlier, about Amy Tan. When you're a woman, I suppose you are twice marginalized.
Mm,
Twice marginalized, and therefore twice discriminated against. And in that case, the question of identity becomes even more difficult, because you're also battling your own cultural heritage, your own cultural traditions, not heritage, your own cultural traditions. Uh, Invariably, there will always be pressure on the woman. I do not know how much there is. I'm not actually read the novel Riot by Tharoor, but in many of the other works that present multiculturalism, this is a major factor. This is something that always factors in about how the woman is the carrier of the cultural traditions of the family. The woman actually embodies the culture of a family. Therefore, when she is uprooted and planted in another culture altogether, she is a carrier of one heritage, and also there is a pressure to adopt and adapt it to the other. I don't remember which poem it was where she speaks about being like truckers. The poet speaks about speaks about going as a truck. The along a road, and stopping by different dhabas. So she says, we are like the trucks on the Grand Trunk Road, and we stop by different dhabas, because these are all aspects of culture which they are supposed to integrate. Apart from that, I'm not really certain about what she says in Riot, but another interesting book that I was struck by when you were making your presentation is how you spoke about Catherine, Priscilla's mother, and how she speaks about her daughter's death. Actually, there's a very interesting book which has just been published. I actually it's published at the beginning of this month. It's called Lost in the Valley of Death. It's a real life narrative, and it's about a young man who comes to India, and he how he travels across the Himalayas. He's come from America and he's lost in the Himalayas. It's a real life story, and how his mother comes looking for him. And eventually she finds that she cannot find him, and she says at least he's been to a place and he's died in a place where he which he always loved. And essentially that's what Catherine also says when she speaks about karma and all that. So I was just linking what you said here in Riot with something that actually happened, and actually happened very very recently. It was in the news that they've just published this book.
I just want to take a moment to share Sivagami's PowerPoint. She somehow didn't realize that her PowerPoint was not being shared. So I, uh, yeah, this is the poem Hurricane Hits England.
Mm.
Sorry, Sivagami, we missed your slides.
It's okay, ma'am.
So seeing the PowerPoint would have made a difference. Yes,
Mm.
yeah.
Thank you.
And
Can I take
one other aspect about I mean, we're talking about India and multiculturalism. Many people in the world, many countries in the world don't understand this concept. When you go from India, they ask, "Are you? Are you a Hindu? You should be okay. If you are from India, that's what they think. You should also. What is your religion? Right? Don't you? They won't accept you. I mean, they don't understand that we can have any number of religions, considering each one. In Hinduism itself we have such variants that some people don't go to this temple or that temple, right? There are so many variants like that. I came to know that after being in Tamil Nadu for some time. I came to know that also. Okay, because I am not much of a temple goer, but still we knew that all temples are meant for all of us. Once temple entry was barred to some people, but then so about language, they think that we all speak the same language, we all speak the same all of us have the same thing. They don't know the number of divisions we have in India, right? That's the Western view, the perspectives that others have about us. Sometimes I wonder if Africa is also the same. Africa also has this kind of everybody thinks that everybody in Africa is black. Some of us still, some of them are so tall, some of them are so short, some of them are, the different tribes and the thing, but whether all these things, what they are, the only when I met one African, I came to know about their intense spirituality. So I think they call it as spirituality, right? They just ask that. They harp on that spirituality, not religion, because religion mainly in all the colonized countries was Christian. Now they've gone back to Muslim. In Africa, not in India. In India, of course, we have this multi things, but the perspectives of different people about us is so different. So multiculturalism, maybe see through prism, our perspective. Somebody said, right? Vanitha, I think highlighted that. But how often do we see them? Or so, what is the right perspective? Or we see what we want to see only? Yes, in
Yes.
this.
In fact, some of the questions are, do you speak Hindu? I think it was R.K. Lakshman who
Yes.
spoke about that when he went abroad. They asked him, "Do you speak Hindu?" And then about how the lady who was speaking to him asked him, she had come to India. And then she said she's gone to different places. She's seen the Taj Mahal, she's seen the Red Fort, and then she said, "I would like to see the caste system. Please show me the caste system." So we have many different perspectives.
Yeah.
I think now, because of lack of time, I think
Yes.
we can wind up. This has been a very interesting exchange of views on multiculturalism,
Yes.
and I hope it
I hope
has,
our students have also benefited from this.
yes, the various insights that have been offered and the various books that have been introduced to you. So, thank you very much, and thank you, Maria Preeti ma'am, for the opportunity. I hand over now
Mm.
to the
Yes,
Nancy, is there a formal vote of thanks?
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We had an we had an insightful session. I thank the chairperson and the presenters for their valuable contribution. We have learned how blending elements of history, religion, culture, and politics are sailing together through multiculturalism. I thank our principal, Dr. Uma Maheshwari ma'am, and the head of the department, Dr. Maria Priti Srinivasan ma'am, for their continual support. I thank all the faculty members and scholars for being the part of this research club. Thank you all. We'll
Yeah.
meet again on 18th February. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
ma'am.
for
Thank
all
you.
for this.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Right.
you.
See you at the next meeting.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.